The introduction, and hello and thanks to the audience for joining the presentation of my paper entitled with Machine Learning-Based Data Stream Merging in Additive Manufacturing. As a research associate at the Smart Factory Lab at the University of Applied Sciences of Austria, Campus Hagenberg, I'm mostly concerned with data analysis tasks in smart production or smart manufacturing environments. Usually I follow the workflow which is depicted on this slide and which is derived from the cross-industry standard process for data mining. This workflow starts right at the production side with data acquisition, moves on to understanding and pre-processing of data before going to data modeling using machine learning methods such as random forest or symbolic regression, for example. Subsequently, the trained models are, for instance, used for concept-driven prediction or product quality estimation, depending on the particular use case. While continuous model improvement is an important, relevant task, model deployment is usually not in my research scope anymore. My major contribution scope spans from data understanding to model evaluation. My main research focus, however, is on machine learning, models, and model evaluation. However, in most use cases, almost 80% of the effort is linked to understand and pre-process the data first, sadly not linked to modeling the data per se. And one particular hard task in here is data merging, or also called data consolidation. And this is what our contribution is all about. But first, I want to introduce the use case from which the motivation for this contribution originates from. We're currently working on a project called Additive AI, where we aim to optimize an additive manufacturing process using methods from artificial intelligence, and more precisely, machine learning methods. In particular, we're investigating a laser metal deposition process using a DMG Mori Lasertec 65-3D. Therein, workpiece is constructed by blowing metal powder on the target item while instantaneously melting the powder with a maximum of 2.5 kilowatt laser beam. You can see the process in action on the picture at the right-hand side of the slide. This process is operating layer-wise until the target item is finished. However, currently the process is struggling with some construction and material-dependent instabilities, which for instance result in deviations of the final construction heat, as one can observe on the lower picture at the right-hand side of the slide. Within our research project, we aim now to mitigate this problem by developing a machine learned model which uses the continuously recorded machine data in order to predict increasing deviations in real time. In the second phase, we'll aim for another model to automatically generate countermeasurements in order to prevent or at least correct construction deviations with adapting the process parameters for the next layer. To build such a model, however, we need data. And gladly, the machine is already recording process parameters consisting of fixed values, measured, and also some computed values. Furthermore, thermographical images are recorded at another subsystem of the machine. Last but not least, we added a custom laser sensor by ourselves to measure the distance between powder nozzle and the workpiece in real time. As I mentioned earlier on the previous slide, one of the first tasks to make use of the data for machine learning is merging the data. Since the data is recorded on different, partly external subsystems of the machinery, to merge the data streams, we would need some sort of primary key, like a timestamp or a positional ID, which is unfortunately not available in this use case. Moreover, the data is recorded with different, partly varying frequencies, which makes it even harder to align the data streams from different sources. On this slide, you can see sample data from the different sources. At the top, you see time series measured by the distance sensor. At the bottom left side, you see example time series of various process parameters. And at the bottom right side, you see a sample thermographical image, which depicts the melt pool below the operating laser-equipped powder nozzle. The initial problem of aligning data from these sources is that the recordings are continuous and the actually relevant part is not labeled all the time, meaning the time windows when the machine is actually welding is not highlighted automatically. What we did now is we manually labeled the data together with domain experts for some sample runs, as you can see at the top. Herein, the red rectangular represent the actual relevant process windows. We did the same also for the other data sources. However, we thought that doing the labeling of process windows manually is no proper solution for future experiments, of course. Since we also did not have access to the machinery software, it was not technically possible to introduce a proper primary key to label the process windows and align them across data sources. So we came up with an off-textbook solution. If we aim to use machine learning in this project, why not using it right from the start for the purpose of data stream merging? So what we did is first pre-process the data to some extent and subsequently label some exemplary data sets together with a domain expert. After another phase of pre-processing, we used machine learning algorithms to create a classification model which should imitate what we did before together with the expert, labeling the data for relevant process windows. In the second test phase, we tested our created classification model on similarly pre-processed but new, unseen data. What we are seeing here are the performance results of the classification models which were built to detect process windows. We trained classification models for the different data sources, the process parameters, and the laser sensor used for distance measuring. Both data sources cover 11 experiments with 5 to 16 layers of welding each. In our experiments, we tested 3 different machine learning methods: linear discriminant analysis, random forest classification, and symbolic classification. As one can easily observe, the model's classification results are almost perfectly aligned with the expert-based decisions for both data sources. In fact, the models for classifying the process parameter time series exactly match the expert-based decisions. So according to these results, classifying the time series regarding relevant and irrelevant parts can be successfully accomplished using machine learning models. After their classification, the identified process windows have to be merged across all data sources. Therefore, we introduced a merging routine which basically consists of 3 simple steps: mitigating classification errors, if there are some, by cutting out short intermediate phases of unequally flagged observations, determining an ID for each classified process window, and applying a linear binning aggregation to align data with unequal record frequencies. After these steps, our merging routine is complete. However, as an addition to our approach, we introduce a validation method to validate our approach here. First, we remove any information regarding the sensed distance values, and subsequently we extract time series features from the remaining variables. After that, we train a regression model for the measured distance by using only input data from the process parameter set, which is independently recorded from the distance sensor. In order to validate the correctness of our previous classification approach, we compare this virtual sensor to the real sensor values. If the model estimations highly correlate with the real measurements, we assume that our merging routine was successful and correct. We validated the approach by developing virtual sensor, so once using the expert classified dataset and once using the model-based classified dataset. Furthermore, for each of the 2 classified datasets, we use different machine learning algorithms again to create the model. In particular, we use therefore linear regression, random forest regression, and symbolic regression. What we can observe from this results table is that it is possible to estimate the measured distance values using other data from process monitoring as input with quite high accuracy. Furthermore, one can easily observe that by now the random forest regression models perform best, regardless of the dataset which it is trained and evaluated on. However, quite closely followed by the symbolic regression models. What else can be observed is that the results of the models trained on the model classified datasets are even superior compared to those based on the expert classified data. One possible explanation to this is that in the expert classified datasets, mistakes, also called human errors, have been made, which the modeling algorithm correctly did not transfer to the final classification model. In order to get an idea of the real value of this virtual sensor model, we computed the standard deviation within the process windows, which is at about 0.262. Now, the mean average error should be below this standard deviation, otherwise we're just assuming that the model is just guessing the current layer number. As you can see, currently the model error is not significantly lower than the standard deviation. However, for our validation purpose, this is just fine by now, and actually not bad at all, since the layer information is not in the input data vector of the virtual sensor model. However, more can be expected if we add more measured data and improve our models, but this was not the very point of this work. Furthermore, we can see here the results from a single run. Closer look into one run. We cut out the irrelevant parts so that only process windows are visible in here. In the plot, we see the target variable in blue, which is the measured distance between the workpiece and the sensor located at the powder nozzle. And furthermore, the estimated values of the trained regression models are plotted for model training and test phase. With reference to the results on the previous slide, we can state that the model is not just guessing layers. As you can see, that the two lines are highly correlated. Because if the model was just layer guessing, we would see a strict step line in here. Nevertheless, we observe several prediction outliers and larger deviations in the test partition. Therefore, improving the developed virtual sensor is still necessary. Now, I want to wrap up my talk by providing some take-home messages and a brief outlook concerning the next steps in the context of the project we're working on. With the presented machine learning-based approach, it was possible to classify the relevant welding process windows and align them, although recording frequencies across the used data sources are different. We validated our approach with so-called virtual sensors and showed that it's superior to the expert-based process window labeling. This particular model will also be used for further steps as a sensor for detecting drifting behavior. And we plan to improve this regression model, for example, by using more measured input data and maybe add some sensory. After that, we plan to tackle the main goal of the use case, which is online parameter adaptation to level out detected process deviations. Therefore, a larger set of experiments has to be executed first, and additional machine learning models will be created on that. Ultimately, I want to emphasize the importance of domain expert knowledge. Without that, not only this particular use case, but also any other application in complex domains such as smart production would not be possible, nor the produced output would be meaningful eventually. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I invite you now to ask any question concerning the presented approach or the project we're working on right now. Thanks a lot.